We are just starting up. Let us get rid of that, add video. No. Camera. OBS virtual cam, perfect. Should be good to go. Let's start the TikTok live. Let's send out an announcement. Open up YouTube comments. Go live there. Should be good to go. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Hopefully everybody's having... Oh, really clipped there. Hopefully everybody's having a spectacular day. Let's make sure that our audio is coming through clean and loud. It really is. Let us go pull up the live on YouTube so we can get the video out. Or we can get the... can you tell me what a manifold is? Right. Okay, can I tell you what a manifold is? A manifold... Okay, I don't... Sorry. A manifold is basically a way of describing kind of smooth shapes. If we're talking about a differentiable manifold. Describing like smooth shapes, but in a very, very general setting. So think of like, you know, like a Pringle shape. Well, that would be an example of a two-dimensional manifold. But you can generalize this way more. You can talk about higher dimensional things. You can talk about things that are not living inside of other things, like a Pringle lives in three-dimensional space, but it doesn't have to. You could just think of it on its own as its own thing. So a manifold is just a way of kind of describing shape, roughly, in a very, very general and mathematical sense. Let me pop out the YouTube chat really quick, just so then I can see both at the same time. Hi, hello. Is nature uniform? It seems to be. Is it true in some circumstances external forces can cause isotopes to decay faster? Not really significantly. So I've heard of, so what can happen is that you can induce fission, you can induce decay, but that would be like saying, ah, yes, this cantaloupe is decaying faster when I introduce it to bacteria. Like, yeah, but that's just because you're making it do it, right? Are my Haskell functions manifolds? No, probably not. Any realistic hope for faster than light travels or warps? No, not really. Where did the energy for the Big Bang come from? We don't know. Could come from the inflaton field, could come from a whole bunch of things. I'm going to bring up a guest who's going to have some questions, presumably. And let's bring him up. Answer a few questions.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, C, how's it going? Can you hear me all right? You there?
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. What questions you got for me?
Yeah, I just had one.
Sure.
So I'm kind of a lay person, so I might be misunderstood on these things here. But I just wanted to know your opinion on different interpretations of quantum mechanics and perhaps their effect on, or not effect, I should say, maybe implication on your theory of time. It's like I'm roughly familiar with the idea that there are some interpretations of quantum mechanics that would say that quantum phenomena are probabilistic, whereas others might say that they're determinate, I think. I just wanted to know if you thought that would have any implications, whether like B theory of time is true or A theory of time is true, etc.
Yeah, so essentially there's only really one probabilistic version of quantum mechanics, the Copenhagen interpretation, and yeah, I think that that's nonsense. And so yeah, like I'm a determinist. I think that B theory of time is as true as we're going to get for a theory of time. And yeah, that's consistent with like my view on quantum mechanics. I take the many worlds interpretation fairly seriously.
Oh, so you don't think there's like a wave function, and you just think that all sorts of options are like actualized in different
Yeah,
possible universes?
yeah.
Do you have like a view on pilot wave theory? I think that's like one of the other ones that I also did.
It's empirically different and is less simple than many worlds, so I kind of don't take it that seriously.
Okay, and one last thing. How do you respond to like criticisms about the many worlds interpretation perhaps being what's the word? I think they would say it's like unparsimonious and perhaps like not empirical because we can't really detect these other worlds. And
So the unparsimonious claim is just a claim of not understanding what theoretical parsimony is. So in principle, it's actually the most parsimonious because it has the fewest assumptions. Just because the consequences of those assumptions are many worlds doesn't mean that that's like a non-parsimonious theory. But as far as being non-empirical, as far as we can tell, basically all interpretations of quantum mechanics, with very few exceptions, are actually testable. Like they can't be empirically determined or distinguished from one another.
okay, that's interesting. Well, that's all I really had to ask. I'm not like too in depth with quantum mechanics, so that was very helpful. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for being here, C. All right, let's go back to answering some questions. Yeah, the CH8, by the way, that was me being cheeky because chemistry is silly. PhD in mathematics or physics? It's in physics, but it's in the mathematical kind of physics. What are your thoughts on the Alcubierre drive? Very, very unlikely. Is it possible to create artificial gravity, and what is element 115? No, and element 115 is just a very, very heavy element that essentially lives for like 0 time. What's your favorite quark? I'm a fan of the up quark because it's useful. You believe in many worlds but not God? Yeah, many worlds is like an empirically, it makes empirical predictions, right? Dyson sphere, is it possible? Maybe not for us, but I mean, in principle, it's possible, right? Theoretical physics, yeah, in a sense. Is there anything infinite in the universe? Yeah, possibly the universe is infinite. What do you think about the Copenhagen interpretation? It's silly. When's the new data coming out about the redshift slowing? It should be this month. They said it would be March 2025, but who knows? Do you know differential geometry? Yeah, of course I do. It's my bread and butter. What are your thoughts on the acoustic cavitation reactor? It sounds like it's probably not going to work. Do gravity and electromagnetic field interact with each other? Yeah, absolutely. What do you think happens in a wave function collapse? I don't think wave functions collapse. I think that they just kind of disassociate from each other. Wait, redshifting is slowing? Well, the acceleration of the universe seems to be slowing, at least according to the DESI data from about a year ago, but we're going to get more information on that soon. Do you think Betelgeuse will go boom in our lifetime? I suspect not. I don't think it's supposed to. Do you think we'll ever figure out black holes? I hope so. What's your thoughts on ETs? I suspect that they exist in the universe, but haven't visited. Sent a guest request. Can I come up? In a bit. Do you think we will ever figure out black holes? I hope so. Yeah, I really hope so. How many numbers of pi do you know? 3.1415926.5. That's about it. Do we know whether or not time is fixed? I don't know what you mean by fixed, but certainly it's relative. What if there is a stable isotope of element 115? There isn't. And we know this because it's not occupying a magic number in the nuclear shell. So there are elements that are more stable because they have magic numbers in the nuclear shell, meaning that they have a special number of protons and a special number of neutrons, and those are more stable. And so the fact is that we know that the number of protons and neutrons in element 115, in particular the number of protons, is not a magic number. So it's going to be less stable than its nearby than the nearby elements that do have magic numbers or are closer to magic numbers. And those aren't stable. So certainly 115 is not going to be stable no matter how you bend it. What was the first sentient thing created in evolution? It's hard to say. What's the formula for calculating force? Forces, it depends on what type of force. If it's a spring force, it would be the spring constant times the distances. If it's the gravitational, let me turn on my mic. If it's the gravitational force, it'll be the product of their masses times the gravitational constant divided by the distance squared. It depends on the force. How is time measured? With a clock. Any tips for visualizing the block sphere in your head? No, the block sphere is hard. How is mass related to time? It's not really. Like it changes how the way time flows, but that's just because mass causes gravity, and gravity does that. Can you explain Hilbert spaces? I'm learning about them in my FEM class, FEM class. Ian, who knows? But a Hilbert space is just a vector space. It has an inner product. It could be infinite dimensional. It's just a special type of vector space, that's all. How neutrinos form. Neutrinos form typically in weak decays. So think of any time that you have a proton or a neutron becoming a proton. That would be an example of beta decay, which is a type of weak decay. That will spit out a positron, an electron and an electron antineutrino, for example. Do you think we'll be able to harvest our sun's energy and power the Earth fully for all of our needs? I hope so. In principle, we can. Would quantum entanglement be your subject or no? I mean, like, I know about it. I have a master's degree in physics and a PhD in physics, but it's not my, like, it's not like, I'm not publishing in quantum mechanics. Like, that's not my area, but I do know quite a lot about it. Do you think it's possible for the alleged anti-gravity propulsion to exist? No, it's not real. Like, definitely not real. What is a physicist? Somebody who does physics for their job. Explain theory of relativity. That's a lot for one question. So all particles take all paths at once, and we see stuff like light only take the most common path. Why is that so? Wouldn't there be the same amount of paths the opposite way? There are infinite paths. So the thing is there's going to be paths that are very, very close to each other. Those are the classical paths. And those paths are going to add together, like their amplitudes will add together, and so we'll basically see the average of those paths. But the paths that are far away from the classical path, that don't minimize the so-called action, those oscillate a lot, and so they cancel out. Isn't force mass times gravity? Gravity's... No, generally no. Can you concisely explain the Higgs field? It's just a field, like there's a whole bunch of fields. So there's an electron field, an electromagnetic field, there's a top quark field, whatever. The Higgs field is another field, and one of the things about the Higgs field is that it interacts with basically everything. And what that means is that when it interacts with various, like quarks and W bosons and so on and so forth, it essentially gives them a little bit of energy, or rather, like it affects the energy that they have, and it slows them down, essentially. This interaction is something that roughly takes time. And so the fact that they slow down means that they must effectively have mass, because they could no longer be traveling at the speed of light. Is light speed travel actually possible, or can we ever go Yeah, it's not. No, it's not possible. What changes in an atomic clock between one in a gravitational field and one in flat space? Time changes. The time changes. It's not a particular thing happening in the atomic clock. It's literally the flow of time. Why is there xenon on Mars? I don't know. Is that so unexpected? What is this new frozen light thing about? It's not frozen light. It's a frozen exciton polariton condensate. What's your opinion on the holographic principle? Do you think it's convincing? It's very, very useful mathematically. I don't think it applies to our universe. Can we talk about superposition, entanglement, and the role of observation? Yeah, so superposition is just the thing that happens when you have two waves happening at the same time. So think about playing two notes on a guitar at the same time. That's superposition. And so because all of matter is made of waves, this is what quantum mechanics is about, you can have matter be in a superposition. That just means that there's kind of two different waves simultaneously. Now, entanglement happens when you have superposition in a multi-particle state. So you can imagine that you have a pair of waves that overlaps with another pair of waves, or a pair of waves and another pair of waves kind of simultaneously. And then when these two will be, if you measure this one, then you'll have to measure that one. If you measure this one, then you have to measure that one. So they're entangled in that sense. And the role of observation, there is no role. It's interaction. Whenever you interact with the system, you're going to change it, and so of course it's going to behave differently. Has nothing to do with human observation or anything like that. I thought repulsive gravity did exist. Yes, in a sense, like, which is, it's just a result of like rotation, essentially. Do you like astrophysics? Yeah, that's cool. Does bad stuff happen to me because I'm a bad person? No. Speak of math, have you read the history of math? Not in that much detail. Can you please explain time dilation? Like, I've read a ton of definitions, but it just doesn't make sense how time can go faster in one place than another. So gravitational time dilation is just that. It's just that the way time flows near mass, like the space-time itself is curved, and that means that time is curved. The way to understand speed-based time dilation, though, is a lot easier. You can think of it as only traveling through space-time at a fixed rate. So if you're not traveling through space, you travel a lot through time, and if you are traveling through space, you travel less through time. How and when do you combine different disciplines of arithmetic and physics? I don't know what you mean by arithmetic here. Who knows more about atoms, physicists or chemists? Physicists know a lot about single atoms. Chemists know little about lots of atoms. Do you think loop quantum gravity is still a good theory for quantum gravity? I don't know a lot about loop quantum gravity. It is pretty compelling though, but I'm sure that there are pitfalls that I'm not familiar with. What do you think about the research funding being cut? It's devastating. It's really, really bad. Yeah, almost all physics research comes from government funding. Why is E equals mc squared? That's just a unit conversion. One way that you can prove this, though, is you can think about the amount of energy that, or the amount of inertial mass that thing must have because it has a certain amount of energy. So put electromagnetic energy into a system, and its inertial mass has to change. And you can just derive this from Maxwell's equations. Does time mean that it works faster in atomic clock? I don't know what that question means. Why is time seen as the fourth dimension? It's a fourth dimension. So what this means is just that there are 3 spatial dimensions and 1 time dimension. So you have 4 space-time dimensions. How is it possible to measure the circumference of a black hole but not the radius? I don't know what you mean by you can't measure the radius. You could just look at it and see how big its radius is. Weight matters, weight of waves. How does that work? Yeah, so electrons are fundamental wave-like excitations of the electron field. Same with protons, or not protons, same with quarks, which makes up protons and neutrons and all that lovely stuff. Is physics still a good major to study in 2026? Yeah, that's fine. Are you in America now? No. What do you think about a circular timeline? Can a human mind comprehend it? I think so, yeah. Why Hawkins radiation evaporates black holes? Well, it's not Hawkins radiation. I don't know who Hawkins is. It's Hawking radiation. Couldn't they eat other particles that appear as well and not lose mass? Yeah, the point is that oh no, you're thinking of the particle antiparticle thing. That's incorrect. The whole one particle falls in, the antiparticle leaves. Like, that's an incorrect view. I do have a video on Hawking radiation though that you should check out. It's on TikTok. I don't know if it's on YouTube yet. What is the information paradox? I actually just put out a video on this, but essentially the idea is that it seems like black holes scramble quantum information, and quantum information is supposed to be unscramblable. Why is it force equal to gravity times mass if gravity is acceleration of free fall? Gravity is a force, and the way that you compute the gravitational force is the gravitational constant times the product of the 2 masses divided by the distance between them squared. That's the now if you say that gravity is just the gravitational acceleration, then yeah, it is just the gravitational acceleration times mass. Times the mass of the thing experiencing that acceleration, I guess. Are Wick rotations just results of Minkowski metric having a negative component? Yes, that's all it is. If light is the fastest, why can't it escape a black hole? Wouldn't gravity be faster than light? No. Gravity is not a thing that's traveling in a black hole. It's just it just has a static gravitational well, and the light can't escape because it can't. Does modern cosmology point to time at the beginning, or do we not know? It doesn't point to it having a beginning. It doesn't point to it not having a beginning. It doesn't really, like, we don't have enough data either way. What are your thoughts on finitism in math? I think it's silly. Is time a real thing, or is it just a helpful tool made up? Depends on your perspective. We just don't know much about time. Time travel possible or not? I suspect not, unless it's to the future. What happens when an unstoppable force comes in contact with an unmovable object? You'll have to ask a philosopher that. Is there a way to detect whether quantum entangled particle has been observed? No. Are space and space-time separate? Space is just a piece of space-time. Is presentism proven false? I mean, essentially, if you trust relativity, yeah. Does entanglement challenge relativity? No, not really. At what speed do we move through the 4th dimension? Depends on how fast you're moving through the other 3, but if you're not moving through the other three, then you move through time at the speed of light. They found the God particle, so stop being atheist. The God particle has nothing to do with theology. Are you an astrophysicist? No, I'm just a mathematical physicist. What made you choose to study physics? Black holes are rad. Do photons experience time? Yes, kind of. They experience something called affine time, which is a real thing, and you should watch my video on it. Is there any real engineering solution yet? Oh, for the asteroid, for a meteorite thing? Not really. Oh, it depends on how much advance notice we have. I'm an undergraduate student studying math and physics, but our professors are non-indulgent in problem-solving only theory. Well, that's unfortunate. How does string theory solution for black holes work? Just a dense region of strings. It's not like one thing. It's not really worked out. The details aren't like settled in string theory. Do you think we could ever prove the one-way speed of light? No, it's a convention. Could we design new types of matter with quarks? Kind of, but it's really hard to predict what you get out. Isn't gravity technically not a force, though? No, it's not technically not a force. What's the difference between space-time and a universe? Well, a universe is everything plus the space-time. Do you like puppies? Yeah. What's your opinion on 2024, the Nobel Prize in Physics being won by computer scientists? I don't like it. Not happy with it. Isn't black hole research rather abstract? Like, imagine not being able to touch it and see it, what it feels like. Well, yeah, that's okay. We can still do math to it. We can still think about it. Do you avoid all UFO questions about UFOs because you think it's dumb? No, it's kind of uninteresting to me. Because there's just no evidence for UFOs. So, like, if somebody's going to claim that there's UFOs, like, present the actual evidence. Don't just present, like, blurry footage from, like from people who don't really know what they're looking at. What relativity isn't a metaphysical theory? Holy shit, what? What? Can we ever measure the return speed of light? No, not really. Do you believe in a speed faster than the speed of light? I don't, no. Can you summarize briefly all the other subatomic particles like neutrinos and positrons and stuff? Yeah, so there's leptons and there's quarks. Those are the two types of matter particles that there are. Leptons include electrons, and it includes their fat, heavy cousins, muons and taus. And then the electrons, mu's, and taus in the lepton family have chargeless, so they all have negative charge. They have their chargeless cousins called neutrinos. Now, the neutrinos are very, very light, and they have no electric charge, but they do interact via the weak nuclear force. On the other hand, we have the quarks. The quarks are the things that make up protons and neutrons. So you have the up quark and the down quark that makes up all of the protons and neutrons that you see, and then each of them have two fatter cousins. They have the strange and the charm quarks and the top and the bottom quarks. Now, the only matter that we interact with are up and down quarks and electrons, and all of those particles have their own antiparticles as well. That's basically the gist. Do you think there's something fundamental outside of space-time? No, I don't even think outside of space-time makes sense. No evidence of UFO, but do you believe we are alone? No, I don't think that we're alone. Is relativity actually real? Is it proven? It's definitely, like, we have bucket loads of evidence for it, yeah. What are the tensors of Einstein field equations? Not sure if I'm just slow, but I don't get it. The tensors, so if you're asking what a tensor is just a way of characterizing in a geometric way certain features of, curvature or matter or whatever. In a way that doesn't care about the coordinates that you use to describe them. What happens if you push a split atom into a dark hole? I don't know what you mean by a split atom. Do you like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bob Lazar? Neil deGrasse Tyson is fine. Bob Lazar's a hack. And, like, literally a fraud. Will there ever be a proof of a holographic universe? Well, the universe probably isn't holographic. It's like a mathematical principle. It's not necessarily like a physical one. So I suspect not. Do you think we will unify GR and quantum mechanics with string theory or with fundamental new theory? I think that we'll need something fundamentally new. What are your thoughts on interdimensional beings? Probably made up. My guess is hallucinations or drug-induced trips. Who made the strong nuclear force repulsive at less than 3 meters? Yeah, good question. Why do the fundamental forces exist at all? Like, where do they arise from? That's not a question for physics. How's your research going? Pretty well, generally. If the universe is expanding, then it is expanding into some space. What was there? No, it's not expanding into some space. What about Stephen Greer? Just as much a hack as Bob Lazar. Do atoms expand with space? They do not. Only things that are gravitationally unbound and not bounded with anything else expand. Is the Big Bang a constant speed or like a wave? It's kind of neither. It's been slowing down and then it sped up again. Is there any modern resource you know to learn and study physics? Yeah, textbooks. What jobs do you have with a PhD in physics? Generally a physicist, or if you want to go into industry, you can do software, big data, finance. Depends on what you mean by relativity. The choice of simultaneity, aka Lorentz frames with local time, then gives isotropic light propagation versus Galilean frames is kind of a gauge choice. Yeah, it is a gauge choice. Yep. Are we close to getting unified theory of everything? No. What about ghosts? I don't think ghosts are real. How's your day going? It's going okay. I'm a bit exhausted, but I'm okay. What's the difference between dark matter and dark energy? Dark matter is like what we call this observation that we have that there seems to be more mass in the universe. Like if we use the standard laws of gravity, there seems to be more mass than we can see. Dark energy is the whatever the cause is for the observed accelerated expansion of the universe. Do you use geometric algebra for physics? Is geometric algebra... That's the stuff that you learn in high school, right? So no, not really. Can you explain what a Bose-Einstein condensate is? Yeah, it's basically when you have a large amount of matter, a large amount of like matter, which is protons, neutrons, electrons, whatever, that happens to occupy the same quantum state. And this happens for very, very strange quantum mechanical reasons, but essentially it behaves like one giant atom or one giant lump of whatever. Why do we think dark matter exists instead of thinking we don't understand gravity at large scales? Because it seems like gravity at large scales seems to work perfectly if you just assume that there's missing mass, essentially. And it seems like the other ideas for, you know, how dark matter might, or how gravity might work to not account for the dark matter, seems like has a whole bunch of other flaws. So what do you think about gravity rainbow theory? I'm not familiar with it, but I've heard about it. Is it theoretically possible to travel through space faster than light if you compress, expand space? Yeah, that's what a warp drive is, but we can't make those. If the universe is expanding, doesn't that necessarily mean it's finite? Nope. It's a local thing. It doesn't depend on the size. It doesn't depend on the global structure at all. So space being created every second for the universe to expand there, it's not like a finite thing with edges that's getting bigger. It's like every meter of space is 2 meters of space in a billion years. Do neutrons have antiparticles? Yeah, and it's still neutral. What properties does solid light have? It's not solid light. It's a exciton polariton condensate. It's that was kind of fueled by a light source. I'll make a video about it at some point. Do you think time is an illusion in physics? It depends on my mood. Where does the universe get its energy for continuous expansion? Whatever dark energy is, seems to be. Do atoms ever actually touch each other? Atoms are not solid things, so it doesn't really make sense to ask that question. How does the measurement problem challenge our understanding of reality? It doesn't really. Does timescapes replace dark energy? We'll see, but I suspect not. Thank you for the subscription, Pablo. I appreciate you. By the way, if you guys are watching on YouTube or on TikTok, make sure to subscribe and like the live and all of these lovely things. They really help the channel out. And if you want to support me, there's a Cash App in the link tree in my bio. There's a Cash App in the description of the live on YouTube. If you want to support me, it definitely helps. I appreciate the contributions and all of these lovely things. Also, there's a Discord that you should join, which is cool. So consider that. Is there a chance that our world has continuous energies rather than discrete? It does, in a sense. Yeah, kinetic energy is continuous, in some sense. How is Goldstone's theorem motivated? I actually don't know the history there. Why is group theory important for physics? Well, because the way that we describe particles is in terms of groups. Or Lie algebras, really. When the universe is expanding, does it create matter? No, it doesn't. What in physics is the most fun part in your opinion? The satisfaction when you actually have a new result. That's fun. How does the measurement problem... Oh, I already answered that. Can you explain BRST symmetry in an intuitive way? No. It's like a cosmology thing, and that kind of algebraic geometry is very, very confusing. And I don't have a good intuition for it. Like, I can run the calculations, but I don't have a good intuition for it, so I can't really explain it in an intuitive way. Did we get the new data from Desi? Not yet. I've been looking. What does it mean that energy is a tabulation method or something like that? Heard Brian Greed say before. Yeah, energy is just a number. It's not like a real thing. It's just a method of tabulating, you know, keeping track of what's going on in the system. Bob Lazar claims his IQ is 195. Yeah, and he's a fraud. So is there a more gross physical substance than poop? Probably. Could light be conscious in your opinion? No. If there's no nothing, can we extract that? I don't know what that means. Is life thermodynamically favorable? Yeah, it increases entropy production. What's your favorite field and why is it StatMech? I hate StatMech. Easiest way you can explain the atmosphere sticking? Gravity. Things are attracted to the Earth. Were you born in an atheist environment? No. Can you explain supersymmetric Lagrangians? Not in a Ask a Physicist live. Is it the measuring or the observing that decides wave versus particle? It's the measuring. Easiest... Oh, I already answered that. The actual details of like the very rigorous quantum field theory stuff is just not my strong suit. The very, very rigorous like QFT stuff. Like you know, I got A's in my classes, but like I haven't done it in 8 years, and it's one of those things that's actually like really, really tricky. Do you know Joe Dispenza? If you do, what do you think of his work? Oh, he's a hack too. He's a hack and a fraud. Why do you hate StatMech? Probably because I had a bad teacher. or a series of teachers rather. What is going to happen to the semiconductor industry when we reach the limits of the physical world? Well, we'll do three-dimensional ones. So the new energy that comes in with expansion doesn't actually have to break a time translation symmetry. No, it does break a time translation symmetry. The time translation symmetry that's being broken comes from the fact that the space-time volume form is changing with time. So the Lagrangian's doesn't respect the time translation symmetry. Is Laplace system even doable with a supercomputer? No, no, because we have quantum mechanics. You only answer the easy questions. Well, somebody asked about BRST quantization, and like I haven't touched that stuff in like 8 years or 10 years even. So yeah, it's been a while, and I can't recall that off the top of my head. I'd have to actually go and refresh my memory. How do animals collectively feel earthquakes up to hours before we detect them? No idea. I have no idea. Why do you dislike StatMech? Probably because I had a bad teacher. Do you think consciousness has to do with wave function collapse in quantum mechanics? No. What is the 0-point energy, and how is it the energy in empty space? I read somewhere there's 10 to 100 joules in empty space. No. Each cubic centimeter of space has about 0.006 joules, if I remember correctly. So, like, very, very... Or, no, I'm sorry. It's much, much less than that. There's very, very little energy in empty space. There's just a lot of space. The whole thing about 0-point energy, all it is that... one way to think about this is that a quantum mechanical system kind of behaves like an oscillator, like a pendulum, except it can never be totally at rest. Because if it were, then the Heisenberg uncertainty principle would be violated. So we know the system is always oscillating just a little bit, and that's the 0-point energy. It's the minimum energy that it can have. Is the world invariant under parity? No, it's not. Can you explain Yang-Mills mass gap? Yeah, the reason is the Yang-Mills mass gap, if I remember correctly, is basically the claim that if you make a gluon, or a glue ball rather, some bound state out of just gluons, that it should have a non-zero mass. And proving that is very, very hard, I guess. This is not like my area, but it's something I know a little bit about. What does antimatter look like? In principle, it should look identical to regular matter. The only difference is that the charge is opposite. Scientists know when they don't know the answer you expect. Oh yeah. Do magnetic electricity devices work like perpetual energy? No, they do not work. The hardest part about making a perpetual motion device is figuring out where to hide the plug. What do you think about the singularity? Are you worried about AI, or do you think it'll be I don't think about it too much. Is there a scientific explanation for consciousness? Maybe ask a neuroscientist. Is physics worth studying? I like it. Why wouldn't consciousness contribute to quantum mechanics? It just doesn't seem to. Does your research involve any stochastic processes? No. I do mathematics and relativity, both of which are classical. What's your favorite amount of valence electrons? I don't know. I don't really care about valence electrons. Springs get stiffer over time. The result would be an oscillator that doesn't change intrinsically. Yes. How do we know that billions of light years away, every isn't being created or destroyed, or how can we really prove any theory for every possible? I don't know what that question means. What will happen if Antarctic sheet melted entirely? Well, that would be really, really bad for a lot of people because A, ocean levels would rise a lot, and B, the Earth would get a lot hotter because it wouldn't have as much reflection. Who is Planck and why he say constant? Well, he was a physicist in the early 20th century, and he came up with a constant to relate the energy of a photon to its frequency, and that constant happens to show up everywhere. Is there a practical use for directional mass particles? Not as far as I know. Do you hate engineers? No. Do you want to believe that God exists? Not really. Thoughts on Microsoft's quantum chip? I made a video about it a while ago. Their announcement was kind of nonsense. So, why am I bad at physics? How to improve? Is physics more intuition-based, knowledge-based, or practice-based? You will develop intuition and knowledge if you practice more. How can Big Bang happen on its own? Physics says you need energy to move objects in motion. Well, I suspect it was caused by something prior to it. How do we know that billions of light years away, energy isn't being created or stored, or how can we really prove any theory of every possibility? Well, I mean, in principle, you could just say, well, yeah, actually, you just don't know. But we generally assume some sort of uniformity. That's how we do science. Yes, you're right, but the theoretical calculation shows the big number, but the practical observation shows there's very little energy in empty space. Why? Essentially, why is because the people who are doing the calculation, the theoretical calculation, are doing it wrong. Are you already a math genius when you were a kid? I was good at math as a kid, yeah. Copenhagen or many worlds? Not Copenhagen. Many worlds seems fine. There are some problems with it, but it seems fine generally. It seems like a good idea. Have you tried A-level physics paper? Nope. Is the double slit experiment observer effect impacted by where the observer is? It has nothing to do with the observer. It has everything to do with the measurement device. Do you think free will exists? No. Thought on Nikola Tesla? Genius, madman, or both? I don't know if he was a genius. I wouldn't call him a madman either. Dude probably just had OCD. There are laws everywhere. Is there still something happening with truth? I don't know what that means. What's your day job? I'm a physicist / mathematician. Do theoretical physicists really look down on experimental physicists? No. So the point is that our description of expansion that leads to a broken time translation symmetry can be described as a dissipative process under the second time differential translation is under a second different time translation symmetry. I suppose. I don't know what you mean by a second different time translation symmetry. But how long have you had your PhD? Almost 3 years. What about scientists freezing light? They didn't freeze light. They produced a exciton polariton condensate that used the light as a fuel. Why won't perpetual magnetic energy machines work on a small scale? Because there is no such thing as perpetual motion. It violates the first law of thermodynamics. So, if you find yourself claiming or thinking that a perpetual motion machine exists, then you've made a mistake. What should I review before taking differential equations? Linear algebra, calculus, both would be good. Can you explain the photoelectric effect? Yeah, the photoelectric effect is basically the idea that if you shine photons onto a metal, depending on the frequency of the photon, it'll knock an electron out. That's the whole thing. What are you reading from? It's not this chat. There's also a YouTube chat, because I'm live streaming on both. Do atoms really never touch? Atoms aren't solid objects that have like hard boundaries that they can touch at, so it's not really the right question. I'd argue that free will from our own personal perspective exists. Okay. What's the most interesting thing you've studied in your work? Probably Kerr de Sitter black holes. Those are very, very strange. Very, very weird. Is there such thing as the scientific method? There is like the general vibe of the scientific method. What was your PhD thesis? It was on conformal hypersurface geometry. What's causing a superposition to collapse? An interaction. Although I don't even think collapse is a thing, but what is Cantor's set theory? Are you talking about the Cantor set? Because Cantor didn't develop set theory. That was Russell, I think. Favorite physicist and why? It's got to be Einstein because he was the GOAT. How much are your student loans? I don't have any. So magnet spinning an alternator won't create electricity. No, because it'll take energy to spin the magnets. Why do things fall down when I drop them? Because of gravity. Are you and do most physicists work on new theories or problems, or do you guys do you guys keep studying already discovered stuff? It depends on what the person's working on. I'm working on a few things right now, but one of my projects right now is on Kerr de Sitter black holes. What branch of physics is your favorite? Relativity. What do you know about the Unruh effect? It's on my to-do list of videos to make. Is it possible for quantum entanglement to cause effects through time? It seems to be, yeah. Are you ever going to be on Star Talk? If I'm invited. Do you think there will still be physics research in 1,000 years? Who knows? How did the Parker Solar Probe get so close to the sun's corona? By firing thrusters and flying there. Is it theoretically possible for a stable torus-shaped singularity to exist? They're called ringularities, and yes. What does your wife do for a living? She looks cute. She's a stay-at-home right now. Why is Planck the smallest unit of measuring time in a meaningful way? It's who says that it is? Hey, Dr. Blitz, are you open-minded? I have a new idea that could potentially revolutionize science. I have a policy of not reviewing theories. Sorry, bud. So if that means no to you, then that means then no. Using magnetic forces to push and pull, causing the alternator to spin. Look, anytime that you push and pull on something, there's an equal and opposite force. And so if you push something to generate energy, it's going to take energy to do the pushing. Why does compressing air speed it up at subsonic speeds, but not when supersonic? Look, fluid dynamics is complicated, and supersonic fluid dynamics is even more complicated, so I'm not answering that question because I don't know the answer off the top of my head. What is Noether's theorem? Noether's theorem, in physics anyway, Noether's first theorem, if you will, is a statement about symmetries. These are like transformations that don't change things. So symmetries of a Lagrangian are in a one-to-one correspondence with conserved things. So if you have a Lagrangian that doesn't change when you... Lagrangian is like kind of like a way of describing the dynamics of a system. If you have a Lagrangian that doesn't change when you move it around through space, that will mean that there's momentum conservation, for example. Need to hear some thoughts on Bitcoin from a physicist? It's a Ponzi scheme. Why don't you review theories? Because it takes up a wildly large amount of time, and it's never been useful. It's never had any beneficial effect to anybody in the world. I used to do it for pay, but it's not even worth that time. What's specific latent heat of fusion? This is the amount of energy it takes or gives off depending on which direction the phase transition is going when you're freezing something or melting something. Explain why I'm wrong. If the least action is true, would that just mean that there are no other alternative worlds in quantum theory because everything takes the path of least action? No, but the point is in quantum theory, things don't take the path of least action. It's just that the path of least action is the classical path, not necessarily all possible paths. What if I told you this theory is actually beneficial and could be tested? Everybody says that. Literally everybody has said this. Do FM radio broadcasts reach outer space? Yeah, sure. Oh, actually, FM, I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head. What caused Einstein to be so creative? No idea. Explain centrifugal force. Centrifugal force is just the apparent behavior of motion wanting to move in a straight line when you're in an inertial reference frame. Can you drive e-scooter? Yeah, I ride e-scooters all the time. What are your thoughts on the new research where we captured light and turned it solid? Well, we didn't. We took light, we shoved it into a crystal, it behaved like an it formed an exciton polariton condensate, and then they studied that. Ever thought about becoming a quant after your research endeavors? No, I don't want to be a quant. How does latent heat for a phase change not affect temperature whatsoever? Well, the energy goes into breaking bonds or forming bonds. That's the whole point. Fatal, I'm not going to do it. It's not going to happen. Ask somebody else. Sorry. Yeah, tell a guy to submit it to Science Journal with no good. Yeah, good point. If it's good, submit it to a journal. If you have mass going 99.99% the speed of light and you accelerate it, what happens? It goes slightly closer to the speed of light. Have you ever made a hologram? When I was a kid, yeah. Got here late. Do you not agree with the theory of least action? The principle of least action applies to classical mechanics. Quantum mechanics doesn't have a principle of least action. Rather, the field, it's something like the phase. It's hard to explain, but the what's the phrase here? The path integral oscillates faster the further you are away from the path of least action. And so those paths tend to cancel out because they're highly oscillatory. But the quantum mechanical system absolutely does take all possible paths through space. Or the field takes all possible field configurations regardless of the action. What's the physics behind the Bermuda Triangle? People just crash in the ocean, I think. What probability do you think we are in a simulation? Like 1%, maybe less. If radio were broadcast from other planets, would humans be able to detect it? Depends on the radio type, I guess, and on the power. What would the universe look like if there were continuous energy levels? There are continuous energy levels, just not all of them. Have you researched metaphysics? No, I haven't gone out of my way to learn about it, but I'm pretty skeptical of some metaphysics. If gravity is the curvature of space-time, what would a graviton be? It'd be a fundamental excitation of curvature of space-time. Did you see Veritasium's new video? I haven't, but I've heard bad things about it. If you had to pick, which do you prefer, chemistry or biology? Probably chemistry, but I don't really like either. If it takes all possible paths, shouldn't there be paths where the least time taken paths get canceled too? The least time, so the paths that take the least, that have the least action, the classical paths, those actually tend to add together because their action is so small that they don't oscillate quickly. Where did you study and what do you recommend? I don't tell people where we went to university. But what do you recommend for someone wanting to become a physicist? I like it, but it's the job market's hard. What are quarks exactly? They're a fundamental particle, or rather a fundamental type of particle. Did space-time still exist before the Big Bang? And if not, then what existed? That's a good question. Are you Christian? No. Is Coulomb's law and law of gravitation the same? No, they're closely related, though. How do the nuclear power plants being built, tested at Oak Ridge differ from existing nuclear power plants? I don't know. How to calculate with pi? Well, it depends on what you'd want to do with it, I guess. Can all forces be unified under a common principle of equilibrium-seeking behavior? Sure, that's kind of true. If research papers could talk, they'd sound like you, I think. Yeah, probably. He did PhD in social media. I didn't. This is just a thing I started after my PhD in physics, actually. Most useful physics constant? Probably h-bar, it's my guess. Just because it shows up the most is, yeah. Can you talk more about Hamas? What does that have to do with what we're talking about right now? What would you use a quantum computer to do, figure out? I wouldn't, because the problems that they solve right now are just not problems that I'm interested in solving. I don't need them for my research. What is the equation for Faraday's law? Faraday's law is the law that tells you about the flux through a system, the flux through a loop of coil, or a loop of wire, or just a loop of space, as it relates to the circulation. Sorry. So Lenz's law tells you the direction. Faraday's law, yeah, so it's the line integral of the electric field around a loop is equal to, with some constant, is equal to the flux through that loop of the magnetic field. And Lenz's law tells you the direction. If I remember correctly, it's been, it's been some years. Why are partial differential equations useful in physics? Partial differential equations just tell you how things depend on both position and time. That's basically it. No, Lenz's law tells you the direction, Warpark. Faraday's law tells you the amount. If I remember correctly, I can double check though. Why do relativistic jets happen from a black hole? I have a video on that, but essentially the magnetic fields that they produce kind of force electrons up. Have you considered studying religion before? Yeah, I've studied religion. What's your research about? I do a lot of mathematics and some relativity and stuff. How do you feel about the theory that gravity emerges from entropy? I'm not super convinced. But I'd be happy to be wrong. That seems cool. I spilled a drop of hydrochloric acid on my hand and it hurt, but I washed it off. Am I in danger? Yes. I don't know. Do you know anyone who went to quant? Does it have a presence in physics grad job market? No, I don't know anyone who went to quant, but I didn't really pay attention to most of the people in my grad school. Are the fourth and fifth derivative of displacement useful in physics like jerk and snap? Yeah, they do show up occasionally. How do you feel about rotational motion? It's fine. How often do you do these live sessions? Should be every Wednesday. I haven't done them lately because I was sick. I was really sick last week. And then the few weeks before that, I was out of town for work. So I didn't really have my computer so I couldn't do these. But we should be back to a normal schedule, at least until May. And then May will be quite hectic. Do you know how to program? Yeah, generally. Ever been to CERN? I have not. If the universe isn't finite, how is the energy in it finite? Who says the energy in it is finite? As all frames of reference are equally valid, a photon would take the same time to traverse the universe as it would a room. What does account for redshift energy to go to? No, not really, no. What is space expanding into? It's not. It's a local thing. So it's just saying that if you have a 1 by 1 or a 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter cube now, in 10 billion years, you'll have a 2 meter by 2 meter by 2 meter cube. Do you think most physicists believe in evolution? I would imagine almost all of them do. Thanks for the glasses, Maureen. By the way, y'all, if you want to support what I'm doing, there's a Cash App in the link tree in my bio. There's a Cash App in the description of the YouTube video. There's also a link to a Buy Me a Coffee if the Cash App doesn't work, because it doesn't always work. These are cool ways to support me because, it makes me want to do these more. These are generally not very quote-unquote profitable, if you will. But I do like doing them because they're important to do good science communication. So I do appreciate any support anybody can offer. Of course, it's not required. Would you agree to everything science related back to physics? Yeah, sort of. Just want to say thanks for doing these. Of course, Cranky. I appreciate you. All higher derivatives are useful for analysis, even if they're not appearing in the differential equations. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Did quantum physics really freeze light? No, not really. They used light to create an exciton polariton condensate, which is a fancy quantum mechanical kind of quasi-particle state. And I will make a video on it at some point this week, probably. What semester was the hardest for physics? I don't know, whatever StatMech was in, because I hated StatMech. In a hypothetical universe where time emerges from a more fundamental non-temporal structure, what mathematical framework would best describe the transition from timelessness to causally ordered? We might actually live in that universe, and it involves a kind of like a phase transition from complex time, from imaginary time to real time. Do you know why my heart races in the morning? My guess is you're out of shape. You're going to buy me a milkshake mustache. Well, thank you, Emmanuel. Wait, I don't think that means what I think it means, but regardless, thank you, I guess. Okay. Is time traveling to the past more likely easier than... No, time traveling to the future is very easy. Time traveling to the past is very hard. Why C plus C does not equal 2C? It does. I don't know what you mean by that. It basically does. Is chemistry explainable with physics all the way, or some of that is magic? Yes, in principle it is, but it just gets really, really complicated really, really fast. Did physicists really freeze light? No, not really. Thoughts on OpenStack's textbook for physics? I like it. How stupid is to stick 2 pens into electric outlet and touch the metal thing? Stupid. Could kill you. The energy in the universe is infinite. Why can't we use infinite energy? Like, theoretically, why isn't... Well, look, the energy in the universe might be infinite, but it's spread out through the infinite universe. So there's only a finite amount in any given finite space. I don't understand why you can't avoid a black hole's singularity. Brian Cox says it's like escaping tomorrow, but I don't get that. Because at least in a non-rotating black hole, which is most black holes are rotating, in a non-rotating black hole, the singularity is not a place, it's a time. What do you get a job as with physics? You can be a physicist. It's a profession. It's like you work at a university, or like a laboratory, and you do physics. Or you can go be a finance person or a quant or something like this. Why do some people seem surprised that observing a quantum system changes the system? I don't know, because they read pop science that's badly informed. What are your thoughts on Penrose's orchestrated reduction? I'm not convinced that gravity is the cause of quantum collapse, but it'd be a cool explanation if it's true. What's the best book to learn QED if you already know regular electromagnetism and some QM? I don't know what the best book is. I want to say use Sakurai if that's the book that I think it is, but Weinberg's also pretty popular. But I don't know what the best one is, because it's not like that's not part of my research, so I don't use those books as references like ever. I'm not super familiar with like all of the literature, all of the textbooks. Do you think AI could find granulified theory? Not now. I'm in EE thinking of switching to math, but scared of it not being the best for jobs. If you get a degree in mathematics, you'll probably be okay jobs-wise. Does the universe follow a mathematical structure? I don't know if it follows mathematical structure, but it's certainly describable mathematically. What do you think about the many worlds theory? I kind of like it. What's your favorite manifestation of the ship of Theseus in physics? That's not really a thing in physics. Explain binding energy? Binding energy is just a way of describing the amount of energy it takes to separate something. What is your area of research? Relativity with a very, very small touch of quantum gravity, and mathematics, in particular differential geometry. You missed that Newton was warden of the mint. Yeah, he was warden of the mint. That's true, but I think that was just just a reward, just to give him a job so he didn't have to work for the rest of his life, if I remember correctly. Why is Baron Rutledge so condescending? I don't know. I don't know if he is. How's the cat? She's good. Why do you like many worlds? It's simple. Have you read My Big Toe? I scanned through it. There's not a single equation there, so I'm not worried about it being a physics book. Did you ever consider engineering back in the day? No, never. Literally never. How do you learn research about new topics like QFT? Where do you get your sources from? So one of the best ways to do this, genuinely, is to type into Google Stack Exchange and then best subject matter textbook. And somebody will have asked the question, and you can just go get the opinions of experts in the field, and they'll tell you what they think the best textbooks are for that book, for that topic, and then you read them. That's what I did when I was trying to learn category theory. Thoughts on Hassenfelder, YouTube, recent anti-science stance? I think it's terrible, and I think that she should be ashamed of herself. If you're watching me now, Sabina, you should be ashamed of yourself. But of course, she's not watching. Do you think all life is carbon-based? Maybe. Have we already cracked nuclear fusion and only need helium-3 to make it stable? No, we still need to figure out how to actually like make it self-sustaining. If reality is purely material, how do you reconcile the role of the observer in quantum mechanics? It doesn't seem to be an observer effect. It seems to be an interaction effect. It doesn't seem to require consciousness whatsoever. Is gravity a force or a bend in space and time? They're the same thing. They're both. It's a force and a space and the bend in space and time. They're both the same. They're not mutually exclusive. How can we know the universe is expanding, not matter just shrinking? I actually made a video on this a while ago, but essentially if matter was shrinking, we would be able to notice because it would have an effect on other things besides just like the distance. What do you think? Do you think we will be able to complete physics somewhat soon? No. What is the point of using orthogonal polynomials for best approximation of functions in L2? I mean, you don't have to use orthogonal approximation or orthogonal polynomials. You can use like whatever you want, right? Any complete basis of functions. There's a lot of different bases, right? Or using orthogonal polynomials just is efficient, I guess. That's a functional analysis question, though. And it's not my area. Are you, Ian, and Justin undefeated? In some sense, I would say so. How is something proven theoretically impossible, but then happens to be physically possible? So they made a mistake in their proof, generally. Isn't observation a form of interaction? If measurement changes the outcome, doesn't that imply the observer plays an active role in shaping reality? No. No. Actually, because you could have like just a non-person measurement device. Like just make ChatGPT do a measurement and then report back to you. It's the newest discovery in quantum physics currently. For that, I don't know. What do you think about Italian solid light? It's not solid light. How long does it take to be a physicist? Well, you typically need a PhD, so minimum like 9 years. Are spin numbers just a labeling convention, or do they actually show up in experiment math? Yeah, they actually show up in experimental math. Yeah. How long did you study all that? I've been in the field for now 13 years. Well, I started my undergraduate 13 years ago, and I got my PhD three years ago. So what's harder for you to do? Get a woman off or admit you're wrong? I could ask my wife, but I think that she'd be, she wouldn't answer the way you want me to. Do you think being a physicist will ever be useless if we figure out all of physics? Well, maybe, but then we're done, right? What chat is this guy reading? I'm multi-streaming to YouTube and TikTok, so I'm reading TikTok chat because there's a lot more TikTok chat. I see what you're saying. Doesn't the choice of what to measure still determine the outcome? Even with the device, isn't there still an underlying observer effect in deciding what gets measured? In the sense that like the observer determines what's measured, like what kind of thing is measured, maybe, but like you could also just make the like ChatGPT do it or whatever. He's multitasking. I'm not multitasking. There's just multiple chats, 2 different chats. Are you worried about funding for your PhD? Well, my PhD's done. I've had my PhD for 3 years. But I am worried about finding a job because universities aren't hiring anymore. They're cutting hiring. They're freezing hiring. Is there an intuitive reason why the gradient vector points in the direction of greatest descent? Is there a good reason for this? In the same way that when the slope is bigger for a function, the slope is bigger, that means that it's increasing fastest. So the gradient basically measures the derivative in all directions. And so the direction that's going to contribute the most will be the direction where it's increasing the most, because that's where the derivative is highest. As a physicist, how much has the knowledge affected your daily activities? Not really any, but my daily activities are mostly physics-based, so physics and mathematics. How does the Higgs boson give particles mass? Just through interaction. That's it. How can there be a beginning to time? Well, in principle, there could be a first moment. I don't see an issue with that. flow of entropy related to flow of time? Perhaps. Are you skeptical of all that mysticism surrounding subatomic? Yeah, the mysticism is not really useful in science. Assuming you have seen it, I have not seen Veritasium's latest video. No. Can you explain the Italian scientist freezing light? I'm going to make a video about it. I'm going to do a deep dive on it. What rank are you on Marvel Rivals? I'm a paltry gold 1, but I haven't played in like 3 weeks. And I won't be able to play for another few weeks because I'm super, super busy right now. Best niche of physics to gravitate toward for a freshman in college? Condensed matter, something or other, probably. From where you're reading the chats? Well, I'm reading them on TikTok. There's TikTok comments too. What are your hobbies? I play Marvel Rivals. I do TikTok stuff. Why are universities freezing hiring? Because of Trump. Because of Trump is, considering cutting funding. Like, what's your favorite piece of anti-theistic evidence? Probably like the failures of the human body. Have you always had long hair? Since like 6th grade or so. What is entropy in practical terms? Essentially, it's a measure of disorder. Would be careful. Entropy could be tied to the area of time, but the flow of time is sort of something a bit different. Well, yeah, it really depends. It could be. It could be related. It could not be related. And a probable solution to what gravity is. Please read it after the live broadcast. I don't review theories. Is neutrino physics the current hot field in physics? No, it's really, really big. What's entropy in practice? Oh, I already answered that. Do you play on PC? I play on PC, yeah. Could you explain why conservation of energy arises from symmetry? It just falls out of Noether's theorem. So I would go take a look at Noether's theorem, and it falls out of time translation. Is he cutting funding to the entire university or certain subjects? So universities like Harvard and Columbia and UNC Chapel Hill, these universities are just doing hiring freezes right now and are asking for departments to kind of cut spending because they're worried about funding cuts. Like, it's really, really bad. Does space-time curvature mean that the space inside a gravitational well is bigger on the inside, or is the curvature just in time? No. It could also be bigger on the inside. Sorry, but if Columbia wanted to keep those 400 millis, they maybe should have not enabled terrorist supporters. I don't think that cutting funding to a physics department has anything to do with like pro-Palestine protests. So maybe fuck off. Like, maybe consider that. Why do they put a wormhole so far away in Interstellar? I don't know. Ask the authors. What physicist contributed most to the development of physics with the least amount of recognition? Philip Anderson. I mean, it's not like he didn't get a lot of recognition. He got a Nobel Prize, but he's super underrated. Super, super original physicist. What happens to universities if we have severe brain drain like this? Well, they get worse. Did Google actually prove the multiverse real? No, not at all. Fair point, but wouldn't ChatGPT or any device still be programmed by humans to measure specific things? Maybe. Maybe it's not programmed. Maybe it's stochastic. It has everything to do with physics funding? Nope, they seem completely unrelated, actually. What is the name of the eternal universe model that you think is most accurate? I don't think that there is a most accurate model. How would you explain a photon having no mass but having an energy? I am misunderstanding the equations. Energy and mass aren't intrinsically linked. What's your Erdős number? Probably, I think it's 6 or 7. It's pretty high. Please do a Veritasium breakdown video. I'm not going to, but I think some other people already have. Doesn't the entropical principle prove that there are no other universes because any universe with different constants than ours wouldn't support life? You're thinking of the anthropic principle. Can you explain Schrodinger's cat and quantum computing? I don't get how we can have 4 states. I don't know what you mean by 4 states, but Schrodinger's cat is just a thought experiment to show that the notion of like large scale quantum superposition is kind of absurd. Meaning people aren't going to be in quantum superpositions unless many worlds is true, in which case you have that, but there's no issue because they can't interact with each other. What is the most important skill for studying physics? Determination. You cut off all funding to genetic studies for DNA. Yeah, that's stupid. Can I build a real-life Iron Man nanosuit? Not today. What qualifications do you have? I have a PhD in physics, and I work at a university. Doing research. Do you wish you would have gotten a degree with job opportunities? No, I probably... I don't think I would change things. What's the difference between the four states of matter and the... Measurement collapses the wave function independent of an observer. Then why does the choice of what to measure retroactively affect the outcome? It doesn't. This is a misunderstanding of delayed choice. You should go look up like the only reason you get like retroactively affected outcomes is if you try to understand it classically, but it's not classical. It's quantum. The anthropic principle does not disprove the idea of a multiverse. In fact, it suggests that a multiverse is real, but I'm not convinced. Neil deGrasse Tyson told me I have a wonderful dog at home. Well, that's nice. Why is there order in the first place to become disordered? Well, that's the question known as the initial state problem. We don't know. Does the Big Bang assert that everything came from something or nothing? It doesn't assert either. What do you think about them using a photonic crystal? I think it was to turn light into a supersolid. They didn't turn light into a supersolid. They used a photonic crystal to create an exciton polariton condensate, which is a supersolid. Would you be a good programmer? Yeah, probably. Can placing LIGO more sensible to be placed at the moon because there will be less noise and data? Yeah, maybe. But it's hard to get to the moon. How do you prove Earth curvature without using space agencies of the sky? All you use is a few sticks and measure the length of shadows. Essentially, you can triangulate the position of the sun, and it only works on a globe. What are your thoughts on research to implant artificial memories? It seems silly. Did Microsoft actually discover a new state of matter? Unlikely. Can neutrons be compressed into a solid? Yes, they're called neutron stars. What's the purpose of a quasi-particle having mass in one direction and not the other? There's not a purpose, it's just the way things are sometimes. You can also understand it with classical hidden variables without backward propagation time. That too, yeah. Can you explain what the quantum eraser experiment actually tells us? It's complicated to explain, and I always have to review my notes before I can actually like make sure I don't make mistakes. But I do have a video on it from a while ago that does a fairly in-depth explanation, if I remember correctly. It's a purely quantum effect with no observer dependence. Then why does the interference pattern disappear when which path information is available, even if that information is never consciously observed? When it's available, that means that the measurement's been made. I don't know. I think that you're misunderstanding something here. Also, you're a scientist. Is that what you spend time talking about, not God? Yes, I guess. If that's what... What? Do you think ethics is holding back scientists? Maybe, like, biologists, but not me. My science doesn't really require ethics considerations. Can you explain how zombie stars work? I've never even heard of those. What's your second least favorite color? Brown. It's got to be brown. Best and worst Star Trek TNG episodes? The Measure of a Man is probably my favorite. That's, like, just so good. My least favorite episode has got to be the second episode of the show, Code of Honor, which is like famously bad. Minimum number of dimensionless physical constants from which all other dimensionless physical constants arise. We don't know. Could be 0, could be 1, could be 100, or not 100. Could be 0, could be 1, could be 10. First season kind of iffy in general. True, absolutely true. Hey, hi, could you stream from the regular TikTok version? I can't request up on the one you're using. You can request up, I'm just not taking up guests right now. Because I don't want to. How close are we to creating a black hole in a lab? Not at all. How do atom bombs work? I just made a video about this. Go watch it. Do you think we will ever be able to create a real sentient being? Maybe we already have. Within the philosophy of mathematics, which school of thought are you? Constructivism or Platonism? I'm some sort of nominalist, which I guess falls into constructivism. Do you think we're going to make or discover exotic matter? Depends on what you mean by exotic matter. Why can't there be neon brown? Because it's too gross to possibly exist. So if there's a God, God decided against letting it be. Is cosmic inflation now the conventional belief? It's fairly mainstream, but it's not like accepted by everybody. Do you think machine learning can be useful for research in theoretical physics? To an extent, yeah. I'm exploring whether all forces are just responses to disturbed equilibrium. Observation disrupts balance and transformations restore it. That doesn't sound... It sounds like vibes-based physics, not like actual physics. What happens if one observer measures a quantum particle's position and another observer measures momentum? Could you know its momentum and position simultaneously? No, can't. There's an uncertainty in the time, and so one of them will inevitably measure first, and that'll collapse the system. You have a wart on your foot. What should you do? I don't know. Go to a doctor. Do you still teach? No, not right now. Can you define sentience or consciousness? Nope. Ask a philosopher. Do shadows have mass? Nope. Tell me your best physics joke. Yeah, go ahead, Babs. Okay, what is it? What do 100 trillion neutrinos and what do 100 trillion neutrinos and I have in common? Answer, we're both constantly penetrating your mom. And that's gonna get me banned, Babs. It's so funny though. Do you think trans women are women, Blitz? Yeah, absolutely, because I'm a normal person with normal takes. Are you single? I'm not. What's your goal? What's your view on the golden ratio phenomenon in nature? It's a thing that happens evolutionarily, and otherwise it's not very common. Like it's pretty common evolutionarily, not very common outside of that. How should I practice for European Physics Olympiad? I've never participated, so I don't know. If I was a photon, would I experience time? Yes, affine time. It would be different than the normal time that you're used to, though. Is quantum physics basically physics with a measure of energy? No, not really. What do you do your dissertation on? Conformal geometry. How can I calculate the trajectory of my combustion from my waste point to... I don't know what you mean by that. What's the best analogy you can give about B theory of time? B theory of time is just like a loaf of bread. Each slice of bread is already there. We're just kind of living through it. So are you against the employment of a transcritical gas? What? What? I don't know what that means. How well are you educated in other sciences? Not as well as I probably should be. What does matter? Where does matter go in a black hole? Inside. We don't know where. Have you ever found anything from the philosophy of science useful for the practice of science? Not really. What are Majorana quasi-particles? So they're a type of particle that has anion statistics. And what that means is that when you move them around, their statistical behavior can change. And that makes them really useful for like stable quantum computing bits, because they're kind of like, it depends on how they were moved around. It depends on their history. So like they can't really decay. They can't really like kind of lose their state in that way. Like there's a lot of details that I'm not super proficient in because that's condensed matter stuff, but that's roughly the idea. Golden ratios, evolutionary in galaxy spirals. No, it's not really present in galaxy spirals. It's not all spirals are golden spirals. Is it okay to take our time to study? Yeah, sure. Best science museum. I don't know. What has been the greatest contribution to physics by a non-physicist? There really hasn't been any. Like genuinely. The last time a trained physicist did good work was like in the 1800s by Faraday. Like I can't think of an example of like actual like real contributions to physics done by non-physicists. Maybe like by mathematicians, but you know, that's not what you're asking. Could you speculate that dark matters matter in different dimensions? Some people have done that. But it doesn't seem to work. How did you get through differential equations when currently taking it? It's challenging. Practice, unfortunately. Would you mind explaining radioactive decay from a quantum physics perspective? It depends on the type of decay. But essentially, one type of decay is let's say beta decay. So in beta decay, which is a type of radioactive decay where electrons are emitted, so in beta decay, what happens is that you have a neutron. Neutrons are made of an up quark and 2 down quarks, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think that's right. An up quark and 2 down quarks. And sometimes one of the down quarks will just spontaneously, for reasons of stability, will just spontaneously decay into an up quark. And when it does so, it emits a W boson, which then decays into, which then turns into, because it's not stable, it turns into an electron and an electron antineutrino. Now the reason it does this is because the quarks are always interacting with the W and Z boson fields. And sometimes that they interact in just the right way, neutrons anyway, or the down quarks and the neutrons anyway, interact in just the right way, that it kind of flips a switch and it just interacts with the W and the with the W field and the up field, that it turns into the two of them. And this is a spontaneous quantum process. If we were to create antioxygen and react it with antihydrogen, would the byproducts behave like water? Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love physics, but I suck at math. Any advice on how to get better? Practice. It's literally, mathematics is not a spectator sport. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Faraday was not educated in the normal way. I actually really want to hear why you became a physicist in the first place. Because black holes are so cool. Because they're like so cool. What about chemists? They contribute more to physics than physicists. That's debatable. Can you shorten the distance between two places by traveling between them at the speed of light? Well, you can't travel at the speed of light. So does the universe have frames or ticks like we do in video games? We don't know. How did Newton come to the conclusion that F equals ma? How did he get that? Like, how did he get from a bunch of measurements to that relationship? I don't actually know the history. I don't actually know what his thought process was. I wish I did. Is the center of the mass of the universe unchanged? It depends on... It's not even clear if there is a center of mass of the universe, because the universe might be infinitely large. So it's super not clear. Can you do Breaking Bad level stuff on your own with a physics degree like you can with chemistry? Not really. You could like build some cool electronic stuff, I guess. But you can't make drugs. Is there a percentage chance that we are currently a black hole? I suspect not. There are no radioactive decay. How would the universe be different? It wouldn't be that different. Can you please simplify projectile motion? I don't understand at all. Thing go up, thing come down. What about entropic gravity theory by Verlinde? I'm not convinced by it, but it's a cool idea. Could there be more quantum fields that exist but simply don't interact with ours? Yes, well, that's one of the thoughts of what dark matter is. Thoughts on the Hubble tension? I'm hoping it'll be resolved by DESI, but I kind of doubt that it won't. Are you a believer? No. Do you think about the great attractor often? I don't think about it ever. Literally never, unless people ask about it, which is more likely, heat death, big rip, big crunch, or vacuum decay. We will know more about that this month. Right now it seems to be between heat death and big crunch. Vacuum decay is like, you know, that can happen in any universe, and it actually seems quite plausible. Do you teach Ian physics? Yeah, sometimes. Ian will sometimes ask about physics, and I will absolutely answer questions. What do you think is the fastest speed we could possibly get something to move? The speed of light is impossible. Well, currently, like, the Parker Solar Probe got to like 600,000 miles an hour or something. Are we in a holographic simulation? I don't think so. What is a lethal dose? Hey, Babs. Huh? What is a lethal dose of cheese?
Well, I think it varies person to person.
It's got to be on the order of like a large fraction of your body weight, though. Is new math being discovered every day? Yeah. That's part of my day job. Is time dilation true? Absolutely. Can you explain measure-valued martingales, please? I don't know a lot about game theory or statistical mechanics, or sorry, statistics in that way. Let's say you were up to no good hypothetically. What illegal shit can you do with your knowledge of physics? What could I do with... Not much, I don't think. Like, the thing is like, I guess in principle, so in principle I know how to build an atomic bomb. The thing is, it's very hard to keep that secret, and the materials are very, very hard to get. Lethal dose of cheese, 10,000 milligrams per kilogram. Wait, that's only 10 grams per kilogram. That's not very much at all. Bab, somebody said your wife is a genius, for it does vary person to person. I don't believe gravity could be quantized and string theory is bogus. I mean, that's a belief, I guess. How are you using AI in your research? I'm not. Can you explain how the sun is so round if it keeps exploding? Gravity. Gravity keeps it in. What is the algebra of SU3? It's SU3, just with little s, little u. Can you please explain what dark matter is? Dark matter is essentially just this observation that it looks like there's more mass in the universe than we can see. Namely that if we plugged in more mass, like invisible mass, into our universe, then our theory of gravity would make perfect sense, and everything that we see would make perfect sense. But we don't, because we only see so much mass in the form of starlight and dust and stuff like that. So that's what dark matter is. You're basically Robert Oppenheimer. Well, I appreciate that, I guess. I think. CIA just entered the chat. Yeah, true. Is length contraction pure theory? Yeah, no, there's experiments. In every relativistic heavy ion collision experiment, length contraction is observed. What is the SU2 algebra? It's just SU2. It's just what it's called. It's just I don't know what more detail. Do you want like a Dinkin diagram? How do you visualize greater than three-dimensional vector spaces? You don't. Do you know EPFL? I don't. Do you think A-level math is hard? I don't know what A-level math is. So the motion of celestial bodies doesn't hold with just their masses. Right. Especially like galaxy rotations. Very, very strange. I have not seen Veritasium's new video, and I don't plan on it. I heard it was not good. What question would be answered if we could see the singularity of a black hole? Well, we know what the inside of a black hole is like. It's probably not a singularity. Why can't I use Greek letters to write a formula in the chat? Good question. You should be able to. Maybe get a Greek keyboard. Is there a point between Earth and Sun that has no gravitational pull on because both gravities cancel? Yes, it's called a Lagrange point. Thoughts on Weinstein's geometric unity? It's probably nonsense. Why don't physicists use or talk about ether? Because it's not useful. It's not like a real thing. The smarter the scientist, his knowledge opens to finding God the creator. That's actually like statistically not true. The members of the American the National Academy of Science, which are like top, like the most reputable scientists in the United States, are wildly more likely to be atheists than your average everyday scientist. Is the Big Bang a constant speed or like a wave? It's not really either. It's just you came out. Well, I know. I just don't know what it covers. How can you do the things you do while not doing the things you don't do? True. I heard a bit earlier that scientists managed to freeze light and turn it into a supersolid. Is it legit? Not really. It's bad science reporting. Are you a fan of Stephen Hawking, or has your opinion have changed over the recent years? Yeah, no, he was a brilliant physicist. Brilliant cosmologist, physicist. What do you prefer, SU2 or SU3? SU2 is nicer. It's easier to understand. But SU3 is, well, yeah. No, I just say that's here. Do you know why algebraic geometry can pop up in string theory? Yeah, my understanding is it's related to moduli spaces, but I hate algebraic geometry. It is so confusing to me. It feels like somebody tried to take all of the beautiful parts of geometry and then just get rid of them and replace it with the horrible parts. Have there been experiments on materials permeability to cosmic radiation using particle accelerator? You could just test this yourself. Just get a muon detector and then just put it underneath things. Practical use of hyperbolic trig function. they show up as solutions to certain differential equations. They are also wildly more likely to be Democrats. That's true too. Because it turns out that reality has a liberal bias. Turns out. If the Big Bang created a limited number of atoms, who said that it has a limited number of atoms? If the universe is expanding, what is it expanding into? Expansion is a local thing. It has nothing to do with like the edges of the universe or whatever. It just says that if you have 1 cubic meter of space now, in 10 billion years, you'll have 8 cubic meters of space. Let's just double check, make sure I haven't missed any donations on accident. And if I have, I apologize. I have not. Remember, if you want to support the live, there's a bunch of cool ways to do that. There's a Cash App in the link tree in my bio. There's a Cash App in the description of the YouTube video. There is a link to a Buy Me a Coffee, which is like a Cash App, but it's available in every country, in the same places. Would you get a 5 on every AP physics test? Probably, yeah. I have a physics test tomorrow on Coulomb's law. Can you tell me anything to possibly help? Remember that it goes as 1 over r squared. Are gamma ray bursts really the most destructive force in the universe? Well, they're definitely the most energetic. How does the sun taste? Hot. Until you watch Destiny, you've picked up his mannerisms. I don't really watch Destiny. Like, I do occasionally, when there's like a viral video or something, but... Hey, mate. Oh, okay, I already answered that. Do things change density based on temperature? Not exactly freezing, but colder or warmer? Yeah, they can. How viable is the multiverse theory? It's pretty. It depends on which one you're talking about, but it could be viable. What do you think about engineering physics? Seems like engineering with extra steps. Speaks more like Vosh. Ah, I see. So I did used to watch Vosh. I haven't watched him in a few years though. I watched him, in 2019, 2020, I guess. $2, Dragon Maw. Thank you for the $2 Canadian. Do you think the Chuckanon hypothesis is valid? I've never heard about that. Yeah, I haven't watched Vosh in a few years. But he definitely contributed to my radicalization, and then, then I actually went and did some reading and actually listened to stuff that was, from more educated people. So, that's a perhaps embarrassing admission. I don't know. I think he actually contributed pretty positively to general leftism in the wake of Bernie Sanders, and etc. Who's your favorite philosopher? Sean Carroll, because he's a physicist. Are you not agnostic about reality being a simulation? I am agnostic about it, but I think it's highly unlikely. Have you always liked physics? Yes. Dark matter be an error in assumptions of calculations, or just really dark matter? I mean, it could be that our understanding of gravity is wrong, but like, seems pretty unlikely. Is LeBron the GOAT? No, Einstein's the GOAT. No, he got me, Dragon Maw chucking on D's nuts. No! But thank you for the $2 Canadian, Dragon Maw. I appreciate you. It was worth the joke, I think. What do you think dark matter really is? Like, why? I think it's probably just a type of particle that doesn't interact with the electromagnetic spectrum at all. I've been had. Favorite equation? My favorite equation is probably Gauss's theorem of Grisham. Basically, it relates the intrinsic curvature. Tiger, you supported. You did? I didn't see it. I'm so sorry. Thank you for the basketballs, Tiger. I appreciate you. And the friendship necklace. You're so kind. I missed that. I'm sorry. Right. What was I answering? Is there any practical use of eigenvectors in your field of study? Yes, literally. Yes. Eigenvectors are so important. How much are physicists paid hourly? We're not paid hourly. We have salary. Does the law of attraction have any scientific evidence backing it up? No. What's the difference of special and general relativity? General relativity is special relativity with gravity also. How do we interact with something that isn't on the electromagnetic spectrum? We can interact with it via gravitation. We can interact with it via the weak nuclear force. If Lagrange points are the cancel-out points of gravity, how do you orbit them? Shouldn't you just stand still in them relative to the Earth-centered reference frame? So, in some sense, it depends on which gravitational Lagrange point you're talking about, because they could be like maximum, and then like the gravitational potential is lower everywhere around them, or they could be minimum, where the gravitational potential is higher everywhere around them. And if the gravitational potential is higher everywhere around them, then you can orbit it in the same sense that you can like go down into the gravitational potential. So it really depends on the shape of the gravitational field. How light knows to take the shortest path? I don't think it knows anything. It just does what it does. All right, y'all. It has been an hour and a half. I am losing my voice, so I'm going to end the live here. But to everybody who's been watching, everybody who's asked questions, everybody who's supported me, I appreciate you a lot. You guys make my life much more enjoyable for even, you know, the hour and a half that you guys get with me. I appreciate you. Tigger, thank you for the glasses. Makes me think that I'm doing the world some good. It's nice to step away from the debates every once in a while. So I will see you guys tomorrow. We will do some more debates if I'm not so tired. And take care, everybody.